For the first video, I would like to explain what philosophy is. For those interested in etymology, the word comes from the Greek philo, for friend or lover of something, and sophia, for wisdom. So a philosopher is a lover of wisdom, or at least that's what we're supposed to be. I will take a commonly held position that Western philosophy, with the Western referring to Europe, is rightly conceived as a precursor of science that will attempt a rational explanation to the big questions that the scientific establishment of the day cannot answer. Every science, except mathematics, has some root in philosophy, and this should not be surprising since philosophers created logic and the scientific method. It is also true of the social sciences, including economics. This might not seem so today, that dependence upon philosophy would ever be necessary for these sciences to be possible. It is because over time each of these disciplines has developed a body of theory and observation large enough to allow for specialists and university faculties to operate independently of, those other guys. Yet during his own time, Isaac Newton was called a natural philosopher. It was later that the scientific rigor and precision that he brought to the questions of the motion of the heavenly bodies would result in part of the body of theory and observation known as physics. Nevertheless, there is a major difference between philosophy and science that must be borne in mind. That difference is that philosophy, one must not assume that the newer idea is in any way more true. New ideas are in fact often influenced by a variety of predecessors, sometimes from the ancients, and sometimes they can be just plain wrong. The idea that there is a perpetual progress in philosophy belongs, if anywhere, at the end of the inquiry and not at the beginning. As for religion, it does deal with much of the same subject matter, but its approach is to have articles of faith in sacred texts, rather than critical thinking. As for myself, I've always been curious about the world, nature, man, and how it all fits together on a deeper level. When two men disagree, I've always had a tendency to want to figure out for myself who is right. I accept, along with Socrates, that the unexamined life is not worth living. I can't picture myself living with the most meaningful and important thoughts in my mind being about my job, that meaningless activity I do for money. There are other men who satisfy this kind of mental yearning with sports, becoming knowledgeable about all the teams and all the available stats in order to make predictions, critique a team's management decisions, and engage other fans in debate. The big questions that we will always face if we retain our curiosity and capacity to use our own judgment can be put into three broad themes. The first is regarding the question, what is it? And is the subject of metaphysics. It is here that we place what I was told during my childhood about God, freedom of the will, immortality of the soul. It seems like a nice story, but is it really true? Can I know it to be true, or am I just stuck with faith or lack thereof? This also includes questions of an external world that appears to exist. But how do I know when appearance represents true reality? If both exist, how are mind and matter, body and soul, both related and in communication? Metaphysics also includes questions of space and time, permanence and change. A second theme is that of epistemology, or theory of knowledge. In Greek, knowledge is episteme, as opposed to belief, which is doxa. I might think my doxa is actually episteme, but how can I distinguish between the two and tell if a belief is true? Where does knowledge come from? How do we define knowledge and truth? Are there some kinds of knowledge that we cannot obtain, and if so, how do we determine if one belief is better in some sense than another? The third theme is the question of what I should do, ethics. I generally divide this subject into ethics of values and theories of moral obligation. Value ethics focuses on what values are important and the enumeration of virtues and vices, as well as the question of the good life. Theories of morality focus on the nature of obligation or duty and seek a standard of moral conduct that will allow particular actions to be labeled as good or evil. And so go the three questions that are implied in everything we can think or do, in what we choose, what we get caught up in, or what we just get born into. What is it? How do I know it? What should I do? Our ideas can then be applied to other areas in the philosophy of art, philosophy of science, philosophy of history, or even political philosophy. Ideally, the ideas of metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics are the fundamentals that guide the way. At the very least, applied philosophy ideas should be coherent with the three departments. One thing I mean by this is that those who think they have some really important political ideas should resist the temptation to close their minds to honest debate in metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics if that debate should threaten one's cherished political possession. An example of what constitutes philosophical thinking in the realm of politics would be to ignore the issues of the particular time and place, be about right and wrong rather than right and left, and ask instead, what is the purpose of civil government? In terms of rules for how we are to think without reference to the content of our thought, we have a fourth department of philosophy, logic. Often called the science of correct reasoning, it is specifically concerned with the question of when proof is established by the reasons given in support of a conclusion. In deductive logical validity, a conclusion is proven with certainty by the reasons given for it. With inductive validity, we gain a probable degree of certainty based on a pattern. Logic also is concerned with an enumeration of commonly made errors known as fallacies. I can tell you from experience that it can make people better readers, writers, and thinkers, even if you never study philosophy. So in summary, philosophy deals with questions of reality, knowledge, and right or virtuous conduct. It does so in a way that we attempt to discover truths with precision and intellectual rigor. Plato is the first philosopher in this fully developed sense because he is the first to combine theories of all these matters into a coherent whole. The Republic by Plato is an excellent first book for the beginner because it is an easy read and it contains explanations of some of his theories that one can see put together. So if you like it, hit those like and subscribe buttons. Check out my first video in the series on Plato's theory of forms. Thank you for watching.